Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wa salatu wa salamu ala nabiyyina al-kareem Muhammad ibn Abdullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We have today on our 7th hadith, the hadith of Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu an al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam قال إن الحياء من الإيمان والإيمان في الجنة وإن البذاء من الجفاء والجفاء في النار. In this hadith that is narrated by Imam al-Bukhari, or collected by Imam al-Bukhari in his book Al-Adab al-Mufrad, the manners of the individual, and the hadith is considered authentic. We find that the Prophet ﷺ compares between two things that are opposites. He compares between al-iman wal-badha, al-haya'u wal-badha, and then al-iman wal-jafa. But what does this hadith say? Let's translate it and then look into it. Al-imanu al-haya'u min al-iman. Modesty is from iman, having faith, and faith leads to paradise. And then he tells us that immorality is from harshness of heart, and that harshness of heart, that it leads to hell. And so what we find the Prophet ﷺ doing here is giving us a very beautiful portrayal of the importance of having modesty, and he also helps to do that by showing us the counterpart. Having modesty is a part of iman. And when we think about modesty, firstly, it's the modesty that each and every one of us should have with regards to Allah. Being bashful and being shy with Allah the Exalted. And that requires from the believer that they have a genuine knowledge of Allah's greatness and Allah's blessings upon them. And they recognize all of these blessings and Allah's greatness, and they would be shy and are shy and have modesty and bashfulness in them, such that they would ever be seen or heard by Allah Azza wa Jal doing or saying that which would be displeasing. To be caught in the act by Allah, that it would be so embarrassing for them to be caught in the act by Allah in a state of disobedience, saying or doing that which would be displeasing to Allah, the most loving, the bestower of all goodness. And so the Prophet ﷺ tells us that this modesty, that the Muslim, the servant who has this modesty, that modesty is surely, certainly a characteristic of that person's faith. The trueness and genuineness of that person's faith. And that is going to lead the person to paradise. Because a person who could live with that sense of taqwa, where they have that sense of awareness of Allah, that they will keep that their mindset such that they will not be seen or heard doing something by Allah that they know will be wrong, that will be embarrassing, and they know that Allah knows and sees and hears all things at all times. Therefore, they're always in a state of vigilance so that they don't get caught off track and off guard. But then there's a second aspect. There's that modesty with Allah Azza wa Jal, but then there's also recognizing that with regards to the people around them, that they also recognize their limits. That they have character and they have manners that protect them from saying and doing things towards others or with others that would in some way be a source of embarrassment that would be, that would take place. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ compares it with the opposite person, not the one who has modesty, but the one who is immodest. The one who, when it comes to their recognition of Allah Azza wa Jal, constantly being aware of them and everything that they say and do, it would appear that they don't care by the way that they live their lives. Because the things that they say and the things that they do, it's relevant that it's clear that their hearts are hardened. Al-Jafa. That their hearts are hardened, and because of that, their manners are also very poor. They're immoral, they're immodest. The things that they will say will be harsh words. The actions that they have will also be harsh. And this is evidence that this person here, neither do they have that recognition of Allah Azza wa Jal, so that this way they control themselves, they control their tongues, they control their bodies, they don't allow their emotions to get the wrong of them, to get the bad, the worst of them, to cause them to say or do things that will be with Allah Azza wa Jal bad and wrong, and also with regards to the people. They don't care. This is the type of person that has no issues saying something wrong or bad, abusing somebody verbally, saying things, cursing, whatever the case is, and feeling that they have every right to, and because maybe perhaps they feel upset or they feel wronged or whatever the case is, that they lose their self-control and their self-constraint, and because of that they'll end up saying and doing things that are bad. How many people have been hurt because of someone who has these characteristics of being cold-hearted, of being harsh, of being cruel, of not having that self-control and composure? How many people have been hurt, and how many relationship has been broken? How many a home has been destroyed because of somebody who has these awful traits, these very disgusting, awful traits that Allah despises? And this is why the Prophet ﷺ tells us that the person who has these despised characteristics, that these are from the people of hell. And so it's for us to recognize, brothers and sisters, that modesty is something that's essential. That recognition of Allah Azza wa Jal and the rights of Allah Subhanahu, and also the rights of the people, that these are things that are very essential for us to keep in mind. That we would not want to say or do something that would be an embarrassment for us with Allah Azza wa Jal, and that it would not be something that blows off our self-integrity and our dignity, but rather we want to make sure that we always remain to be Abdullah wa Amatullah, the slave and servant of Allah that Allah loves, regardless of who we're dealing with, regardless of where we're at, regardless of the context of whatever situation we may be caught in the middle of, that we need to keep control of ourselves for Allah, and that we remain the stable Muslims, the believers that Allah Azza wa Jal wants us to be. And in doing so, we can be sure that we're on that path, as the Prophet ﷺ told us, وَالْإِيمَانُ فِي الْجَنَّةِ, that our faith will lead us to Jannah. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to bless us to be of those of His servants that have their feet firmly planted on the straight path that leads to Jannah, and that He beautify us for always and forever with the sweetest of speech and the most beautiful of character and etiquettes. Allahumma ameen. Wa salli Allahumma ala nabiyyina Muhammad. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.